You're an actor and a filmmaker. How did you get into the industry and why?
Yeah, I have been this. I feel like I knew, as a lot of people say, like I've done this from a very young age. I've been doing little like kid theater since I was like in like third grade. So I feel like I knew really early on. I used to audition when I was really young too. From like the time I was like 6, because I grew up here. I grew up in LA. So I was going on little auditions for commercials and little parts in TV shows from the time I was like 6. And then I did it for like a few years, and then I got braces, and my agent was like, "We can't really represent you with
That's so
braces."
sad.
So I stopped doing that. I wasn't that attached at the moment. I was like, yeah, this is kind of like getting old. And then I went to theater school in New York. Was, there a few years after graduation. It was pretty unproductive, essentially just like living in New York as a postgraduate, not acting at all, like working at a restaurant till 3 a.m. every night, sleeping till 1 p.m. and then doing it all over again and being like, I'm living the dream as an artist, but like not creating or doing anything.
Yeah.
So I decided to move back to LA about 6 years ago. Had my fair share of different agents and managers that I went through. Like each year I was like with a different person, mostly because like I was so new to, like I wasn't new to the city, but I was like really naive, and I kind of was grasping for straws. Like anything that came my way, I was like, this person wants to represent me, great, like who do I call, what do I do, who do I meet with, as opposed to like being discerning and like figuring out like who was a good match for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, that wasted like a few years of being here. And then finally I found my team that I love and I trust, and it's an all-female team, which I love. And that kind of helped my career a lot, in a lot of ways. So yeah, I've been a, working actress here for, I would say, about 4 of the 6 years I've lived here.
Okay.
So.
And who inspires you in acting? Is there anyone that you try and, I don't know, that their work influences your work?
I go through so many phases. I love Kate Blanchett.
Yeah.
Right now I've been watching a lot of Lorin. Who else have I been? Jodie Foster. Yeah. Julianne Moore is probably like my consistent person that I've like loved her work for a long time, and I keep discovering more of her work that like I had never seen. I just watched this movie called Safe.
Yeah.
That she's in from, it's like, I guess it must be like from like the 90s, and she plays this like really disturbed housewife who is like struggling with like her role as a housewife, and then she's kind of going nuts because she's like in this like very provincial like LA, she's like living in San Bernardino in 1990, and she's like this housewife who has no purpose, and she starts to find this like support group that becomes kind of a cult, and she gets involved in that, and it's like she kind of immerses herself in that world. And I forgot who directed it, but it's such an amazing film, and it's such an amazing performance, and like totally understated. I've never even known that she was in this movie.
Yeah.
And she's just like such a consistently powerful, incredible artist that like continues to make amazing work.
Yeah.
So yeah, she might be my number one.
And would you say that the TV shows and the films you enjoy watching are in the same sort of style as the ones that you enjoy acting, or are they quite different?
Yeah, definitely.
They're the same?
Yeah.
Similar?
Yeah, definitely the same. Definitely the same. I mean, of course, like, I get sucked into, like, the reality TV realm just like anyone else. And, like, will, like, you know, find myself watching, like, the Kardashians.
Don't we all?
Like, Love is Blind, especially during this quarantine. But, like, ultimately, the things that, yeah, I would love to be in are things that I watch.
And you've worked on some really interesting shows. I saw you worked on You and the Gianni Versace show, but you've also worked in commercials. How does the acting, how is it different between the two, between working on film and TV series compared to commercials?
Yeah. I feel like commercials there's such a formula that you can honestly, like, you can use that formula for most brands. And it's, like, such a thing that I just kind of learned early on that, like, if you are someone who's looks like me and you know, do the, like, if you're, like, playing that up and, like, playing the, like, you know, mid to late 20s brunette girl, like, you kind of, they want the same thing.
Okay.
They want, or like, if you know, for me, like, I have, like, a more, like, hip, edgy side. So, like, or I could also be the, like, young mom. So once you're walking in that room, you still know that they want the same thing. They want that, like, bright, peppy. Even if you're playing an edgier girl, they still want that. They want that bright, smiley thing. And, like, as, like, formulaic as it is, it, like, is so easy to kind of tackle.
Yeah.
Once you realize that that's what it is.
I guess that's good that you've worked it out. Because for some people, they probably overthink it, but you understand the formula.
It is really, like, you really can't overthink it at all. And, like, I've seen girls, like, in like, you know, audition waiting rooms for callbacks, like, rehearsing. Like, it'll be, like, a teeth brushing sequence, and they, like, are practicing the thing, and it's like, you really don't need to do that. Like, if you're just, like, living in the moment and, like, being authentic and staying positive, like, having positive thoughts as opposed to, like, this is awkward, this is weird, like, I hate this, oh my god, these people are watching me, it's weird. Like, as long as you're not having that and you're just like, what's up, like, all right, let's do this, like, 9 times out of 10, like, that'll work.
You'll get it. Yeah. What's your...
And it's not brain surgery, it's so easy. And
yeah,
I mean, it's great money, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
And it's helped me survive as an actor in this city, which is great.
What's the craziest commercial you've worked on, or the most random?
The first commercial, big international, it was an international commercial I did, was for Lyft.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like a $3 million budget, and they had all of, like, when we got to set, it was on an underpass. So it was, the premise was, like, I was in gridlock in my car driving, and they had stacked all of these cars, literally were, like, taking a crane and, like, bringing in all of these cars and stacking them on top of each other.
Oh my god.
And they had, so the premise is she's, like, in gridlock, she gets out of her car, and all of these crazy characters are around her. So there was, like, circus animals, there were clowns, there was a full-on giraffe. They, like, brought in a giraffe, along with these, like, stacked up cars that I had to walk on top of in heels. So that was crazy. And I felt like I was like 24, 23, 24. And, like, looking back, it was probably pretty dangerous.
Yeah, that sounds dangerous.
In these, like, platform heels that were way too small for me, and walking on top of cars, which, like, at the time I should have thought and been like, I probably need, like, a harness or something in case I fall. but I wanted to be that girl that was like, I'm fine, like I don't need anything.
I'm a stunt woman.
Yes. And then the stunt people on the other end were like trying to save their ass. So they were like, no, you need a harness. And then the director's fighting them going, no, I don't want her in a harness. And I'm like, I just want to side with the director. Like, I don't need a harness. And they were like, no, this is really dangerous. So like I had that in the back of my mind as I was like climbing these cars in heels, like not wanting to like screw anything up and not wanting to like, I wanted to get the take and I wanted them to like be happy with me. So that was pretty crazy. Yeah, I mean,
would you stand up to the director and value your safety over what he wants or she wants?
I'd love to say I would. That like, more radical side of me would love to be like, I would absolutely stand up to them.
Yeah.
In the moment, would I? I don't know.
It's difficult. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's a lot of pressure.
Hard bargain.
Yeah.
I actually think that now, because of this pandemic, I would. Because, like, I don't know, but, like, something about this, not even pandemic, but, like, this whole kind of crossroads in our culture currently has made me devalue a lot of the things that I valued prior to this.
Yeah.
And, like, the bullshit that, like, you put up with because you're like, well, I want to book the job or I want to get the job. And, like, realizing that there's so much more happening in our society that, like, needs tending to beyond this, like, commercial job. So it's, like, I think now I'd actually be like, I don't need this. Like, if I want to stand up for, like, feeling safe, like, I'm happy to do that because who cares at the end of the day?
Yeah, well, that's amazing if that's come out of such a negative situation.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And is there a favourite job that you've done? Acting, commercial, it doesn't matter. Is there a job that stands out that was your favourite, and why? Why is that?
The one I just did, that was a film that I produced that my partner helped write and our friend directed. That might have been my favorite because it's like this like noir experimental short film. It's a short, but the freedom I had in the character that I played, or just I think the character I played in general was like my favorite person that I've ever played.
Yeah.
And it's something that I would never be cast as. Sorry, say that again.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Are you allowed to say what type of character you're playing?
Oh, yeah. So the film is called Jazzberry. And the character I played is called Brandywine. And she plays the best friend of the protagonist, who's an anthropomorphic cat woman. And they live in a town, her and her best friend. They're like the minorities of this whole town that's full of beefy men. So they're the only women in a town composed of all beefy, strong, masculine men.
Yeah.
And Brandywine is she's a scientist, but also she's a scientist by night, and she works at a chocolate shop in the day. So she has this like dual life that she's kind of dealing with, and she's also trying to, she ends up, it's quite convoluted, but the protagonist, the anthropomorphic cat, is trying to fight against these beefy men who are turning into crows. So they become crows as like the villain. The villain of it is a crow, and he turns all of these beefy men into crows in order to spite the protagonist, who's like this sexually liberated woman, Catwoman. So I end up saving her through this formula that I've created as a scientist.
Yeah. That
turns all of the crows back into men again.
Oh, okay. So
it's very convoluted.
So you're the hero.
Yes, I end up being the hero.
That's so fun.
Yeah, but I love her because she's kind of like how I feel internally a lot of the time. Like,
Yeah.
she's she's introverted and she's really cerebral, and she's very like politically correct, and she wants to like stand up for what she believes in, and she's vocal about that, and she's like kind of this like maverick, and she's she doesn't see the purpose of like all of the like material things of the world. Like, she's not caught up in those things, and she's not caught up in being liked or like being popular, being liked. So she's like mostly cares about her friend, and she cares about her work.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like how I feel internally, and I don't always get cast as those things, but because I helped produce, and I, helped make this whole thing happen, I was able to dictate like what part I played. So the second I read the script, I was like, I want to play her.
Yeah, that's so exciting though, that you get to play something slightly different, but something that you feel is true to your inner self. I think that's really cool.
Yeah. So I really, at times when you like meld so well with a character, it's like this like magical thing,
Yeah.
where you're like, oh wow, this is like kind of removed from me, but it's like taking a portion of me that I felt like only I knew about, and then like amplifying it for a screen.
Definitely. That sounds really exciting. Would you have any advice for young actors that are looking to get into the industry?
I would say that there's so many opinions and voices that are constantly like trying to dictate how you go about your career, whether it's, agents or managers or casting directors or photographers or acting teachers. There's so many opinions, and it's hard to find your own amidst that, because you're just always like, oh, this is how you do it. Like, this is how you go about this. Like, this is how you should go about your career. First do this, then do this, then do this. And then you hear a completely like polarizing other opinion that to do it another way. And you're like, I don't know. Like, how do I know what to do? And it's like, I know how this might sound corny, but like, you really have to listen to like what you want and figure that out. Because if you're just going to roll with whatever you think people want, it's just, you're going to drown.
Yeah. So it's finding yourself in amongst too many opinions. That sounds near impossible.
Yeah, it really is. And I've been victim to it. I mean, for most of my 20s, I think I was like, how do I dress? How do I, how should I look in these auditions? Like, what do they want? What acting techniques do I need to like bring out in my repertoire of things that I've learned and things that like I've read? It's like, no, you just have to like throw that all away.
Yeah. And I guess it could be quite damaging to always be thinking, what do they want? Because you're never going to know necessarily.
Yeah.
Unless it's a formula like a commercial. And so the only thing you can be is yourself and go by what you know, and then the rest is sort of up to the universe, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that I hid from this a lot when I started, was like, I would do this thing where like in auditions I would watch tapes over where I was just like putting up this like weird wall and like not being myself at all. And it was like, I don't know if it was a product of me thinking that like what I wanted to emulate what I was like watching, which was like in my mind like this like minimal like indie performance that was just like really small and like unaffected and just like really like chill. And it's like, all right, we're not all like Kristen Stewart, like we're not all gonna do like, that's not what people want. I mean, no, she's great. I love her for that. Like, that's what she does. That's her thing.
Yeah.
That's like part of her being. That's part of her essence. but we can't all do that. We can't all like fit into that mold because it's just boring. It comes across as boring.
Yeah.
And I feel like I wasn't getting any traction because it was like, sure, I guess that's like passable. Like those performances are passable, but like who wants to be passable? I know I don't.
Yeah.
You know.
Not me. And I guess like if someone's already doing it, you can kind of see through someone trying to emulate that in a sense. And they were probably thinking, well, yeah, this is fine, like you say, passable, but what is this girl really about? And that's when the true magic happens, is when you are authentic to yourself. And on a note that's a bit more deep and meaningful, I always ask my guests on my show at the end of the interview, if you have a quote or a mantra that helps you through tough times, as we're experiencing right now with the pandemic, what keeps you going?
I just watched the Robin Williams documentary.
Yeah.
Look Inside My Mind. I think that's what it's called. And this applies more to acting. And yeah, it could apply to both. But he was saying, because he's like an incredibly trained actor, you know, went to Juilliard and did all this theater and, you know, was in, did a lot of comedy for a long time. And he was just like, at the end of the day, when you're doing a scene or you're in the moment and you feel like you have to remember all these things and like be brilliant through like whatever training you've done and like remember all these techniques, it's like when you're in the moment, you're in the moment, and that's all anyone wants to see. Yeah. It's just like fully being authentically you in that character in that moment, and that's all it is. That's like as simple as it is.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh wow, like that's kind of a relief to know that like one of the greatest actors that we've ever seen makes it seem that simple.
Yeah, for sure. I think, it's that, even to me, I'm not obviously an actor, but it's like a really reassuring thing to hear that as long as you're being yourself and you're present in a moment, then that should sort of fly, I guess. If you will. Yeah. That's really nice. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for your time for this interview.
Good luck.
Good luck with everything in the future.
Yeah, thank you.